Do you know anybody's phone number that has two letters in it? I ask because the telephone exchange name, the technology that was really, really important at some point, got phased out. And so when the final phase out of these exchange names happened and direct dialing went straight to numbers, the digit dialing, as it's called, the exchange names became obsolete. So I'm trying to figure out what the kind of the point is where people stopped knowing people's numbers based on the two letter and five number system, which was the final incarnation of the telephone exchange name system. So, on today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, we're going to talk telephone numbers. We're going to talk about exchanges and operators. And of course, we're going to ask the cards to dial in a piece of advice for us today. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet only on YouTube. If you're enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe. If you've already subscribed, then thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you have a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. The reason I didn't phrase the question about phone numbers as, have you seen a phone number with two letters as the first two letters of the number as opposed to two digits or two numbers, that is because there are lots of visible vestiges of this system of telephone exchange names around the U.S., for example, in cities and small towns. And the place I think you most often see them is painted on the sides of buildings that are old, that you may see the paint is probably faded, but there's a telephone number on the building, and it's an advertisement for whoever was doing business in the building, whatever their business was. Say they were a grocer, and you might have had, let's say the number is KL or Klondike 52368. Now that's a famous fake number, often used in movies and TV shows. And if you catch it in a movie or a TV show, let me know in the comments if you're listening and someone says 5552368. So eventually, in a lot of places, what just happened with the exchanges was that when a city or a small town or anywhere would go to an all-number calling plan, that's what we're familiar with today, then the number could still be reached. They wouldn't change everybody's number. You would just now, your phone number, instead of Klondike 52368, would be 555-2368. And 555 in the U.S., those of you listening know that we when we do movies and we do television shows and stuff like that, in the olden days, the 555 numbers are always the used for fake number. It wasn't until 1994 that 555 was really the beginning of numbers outside of directory assistance numbers. Those used to be 555-1212 in a lot of areas, depending on where you were. And that was, to get assistance with a number, information, etc. And apparently the 2368 number was used in a lot of advertisements for Bell Telephone Company in the mid-20th century. So you'll see it written on the phone in print advertising, for example. And what you'll see it written on the phone is exchange with the EX capitalized and bolded 2368. And that's their kind of fake number for their advertisements. And so 555 being a not assigned first three digits, or Klondike 5, KL5, being not assigned exchange name and number, could then be added to the fake last four digits, and then you have a really good fake number. So that's probably why the number that you see so often in films and TV shows from the 70s and 80s have 555-2368, or occasionally Klondike 52368. And so you're looking at this advertisement and you see KL52368 for this grocer. And the odds are, in the place where you live, you will be able to find a sign or an old advertisement, or it could even be on a sign of a shop, especially an older shop, which may still have an old sign that still has the telephone exchange name on it. You can find that in your area. Odds are there's going to be somewhere that's visible, especially if you live in a very large city, because these things are hiding in plain sight. There's a great website with a lot of pictures of them that the person who runs the website has collected from various cities that they've been to. And the sign with that could be very close. And just until recently, until maybe 1 or 2 years ago, there was a sign near where I live, just a couple of blocks away, where there was a telephone exchange name number. I can't remember what exchange it was. But nonetheless, that sign is gone now. But it was there 2 years ago. And I can think of one right now that is not even on a painted building, but a sign of a I think it's a butcher that has still to this day it's a local telephone exchange name on it, just because they've never replaced the sign, and the butcher is older than 50 years old. And somewhere in the mid-20th century, in the 50s and 60s, when a numerical all-number calling system got set up and rolled out, that's when you start seeing the disappearance of the telephone exchange name. And so the telephone will have to have been assigned somewhere before that. So the person that you would know who was assigned that number would have to have been alive in getting a telephone in the first half of the 20th century. Let's say that's the kind of key part. And by the second half of the 20th century, when that is being phased out for all number dialing, and that is then the moment at which there's a cutoff at that point. And all of this went hand in hand with the end of the human operator system of telephone communications on a wide scale. Because before there was digit dialing, where your phone had numbers on it, you just would pick up the receiver, and the operator would ask you for what number you wanted to call or how they could help, and you would give them the number Klondike 52368, or in the case of the song from the mid-20th century, Pennsylvania 65000, that was the number of a famous hotel in New York, the Hotel Pennsylvania. And the reason that the exchange is Pennsylvania is because the area is around Penn Station, Pennsylvania Station, which was the station for the Pennsylvania Railroad, important railroad in the Northeast, and that was its New York station. And so the exchange around Pennsylvania Station was named Pennsylvania, for that reason. And that was true for many, many exchanges around the country, that often local either streets or neighborhood landmark, even the name of a town, for example, Lakewood, New Jersey, would have an exchange with, if it was small enough, would have the exchange of a town. The town's name would be the exchange. So that's and then in that exchange would be the switchboards and the operators that would the switchboard and the operator that would put you through to whoever, whatever numbers were in that exchange. You would be transferred by the operator that you called, if they weren't in the same exchange, to that exchange, and that operator would put you through to the. So originally there was a lot. There's not just one operator involved. So it was a very labor-intensive system, and when it got replaced by automatic switching, then you have the beginning of just all number dialing and a focus on the 3 digits plus 4 digits, as opposed to 2 letters and 5 digits. And even before that, earlier on, there may have been just 4 digits or 2, or there was not necessarily one system for how many digits needed to follow the exchange name. What was important is that the exchange name be said, and maybe there are some places in which 4 digits would work. So Klondike 2368 instead of Klondike 52368. And so there were also systems that were different in the days of the telephone exchanges with operators and names, and that got regularized and adopted. And then at some point in the mid-20th century, the addition of area codes then really made this an all-number affair, because the area codes weren't going to be names of states or names of places, because the idea of all number calling was already in the works. And so the area codes were assigned digits and not names of states. If the idea of the area code had come into existence in, say, the 1910s, then you might actually have seen the occurrence of states or even city names as area codes, because that's what ended up happening with the numbers, is that the numbers got assigned to a state if your population was of a certain amount. But if you had large metropolitan areas in your state that needed to be carved out with their own area code, because there were just a lot of, too many numbers in that large metropolitan area, then you had a different area code for the city. And the idea was that when state area codes were assigned for the whole state, they would just have a 0 in the middle. And that's why those of you who know area codes, that maybe be the original area code for your state, if it only had one area code, there's a 0 in it. And that's the reason why. However, if you have multiple area codes because you have some large cities, so for example, California or Illinois or New York, then you are going to have cities' original area codes with a 1 in the middle. So, for example, like Los Angeles 213, or you have 312 for Chicago, or 212 in New York and New York City. And then those area codes got assigned there. And so this is really set out for the future, a system that was going to last, they thought, until about 2000, the year 2000. But with the creation of new cell phone area codes, and with the rise of cell phones, which they couldn't have predicted and didn't predict, there was the utilization of new area codes, and that would fill in those numbers. So we still have 10-digit numbers. However, in the future, it may be the case that those numbers get exhausted, in which case there is a plan in place by the same group that originally came up with the numbering plan for it's called the North American numbering plan, although not all of North America follows it. But the idea is that there would be an 11th digit added to create even more number, the requisite number of numbers. So that's a possibility in the future. If more telephone numbers need to get assigned than can be handled by the 10-digit system, that you'll be glad to know that there's a plan for 11-digit numbers. All right, well, let's ask the cards what number they have for us today. Oh, and maybe it'll be we'll figure out what the exchanges of the number if we draw the card. It'll be really well. There's no card 55, so we're not gonna draw Klondike. But here we go: yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards, tell us some things. All right, here we go. It's card 41. Mentor as if you were the one being mentored, because you are being too. There's no perfect mentor. There's no perfect mentee. There's only one litmus test for a good mentoring relationship, that the mentoring is done with the care of both persons involved. So talk about a mentoring relationship that involved mutual care, or talk about one that did not. So the card number here is 41. And that's kind of interesting because that actually isn't a possible number for exchanges, because the dialed digit 1 was set aside to not have any letters assigned to it. The letters start, as you know, just pull out your cell phone, you'll see that the letters start at 2 with ABC. So 41 is, 41 is not there's no name for that. And so the cards are just being mysterious today. So I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.